Hey everybody, I'm Lisa Young Sutton, and you are watching the Ways Crossroads Path card video. This is our decision or choice card of the deck. It references options and alternatives, possibilities or potentials, as well as indicating an escape route when it falls near us, along with troubling cards. Its core energy is neutral, so it's highly influenced by the cards that surround it. This is also a card that's linked to the number 2 or higher, in that we know there are at least 2 options or 2 things to consider. The ways may also indicate being at a crossroads in your life or at an impasse regarding a decision, which can involve having doubts, hesitating, postponing, or procrastinating. It will often show this aspect of itself when cards such as the cross, the snake, or the clouds are touching it. The closer it falls, the more relevant a choice or decision is to your current situation. If you've already resigned yourself to a particular idea or decision, it's asking you to consider going another way. To truly understand the importance of this card, think about what making decisions really means. It involves taking control of your situation or your environment and taking action. A decision is an action. When someone feels they have no options, no way out, no choice, they feel powerless and are afraid to make a move. Making decisions, those that feel right to you, will empower and energize you. Just trust that if it feels right, it is. Okay? Think about the back and forth action involved in indecision. Indecision gets you nowhere while burning up all of your fuel. If you wanted to get from New York to Montana, say, right? And you start out and then you doubt and you turn back and then you start up again and then you move a little forward and then you stop, you pull over and you sit still and then you turn around and go back. Are you ever going to get there? No. If you made up your mind to just continue moving forward, you'd arrive at your destination. If you get there and decide it's wrong, you don't have to stay there. But now you're starting from a different place and will see things that you couldn't see if you had stayed where you were. All right? When you see this card, consider words and phrases such as decisions, choices, alternatives, split, diverge, diversify, deliberate, escape route, a new path, hypothesize, mediation, elections, duality, dichotomy, variety, and more than one. Descriptive meanings include roads, sidewalks, trails, or hallways, escape routes, as well as local travel, commuting by road or traveling by foot. In describing a person, it may be someone who's hard to figure out. They may be indecisive or non-committal, maybe of 2 minds, always searching for alternatives. They may be independent and like to take the road less traveled. They may prefer to stay neutral and mediate for others. They may love options and alternatives, and you'll probably never know which way they're going to go. With negative cards, it may describe them as being reluctant, indecisive, back and forth, an escapist, two-faced, a hypocrite, or someone who leads a double life. Occupations or hobbies include an arbitrator, a mediator, a life coach, a drifter, a hiker, tourist, or tour guide, one who prefers temporary or several part-time jobs, or a dabbler. In a daily draw, if you've been putting off making a decision and this card appears, it's time to make it. It can say that you'll find an alternative to something, or will begin to see things in a different way, or decide to take an alternate approach. It may reference a road or a path, so see what the other cards have to say. This card often shows up in my dailies to tell me to take a different route when driving or a different path on my daily hikes. In advice readings, it's telling you to give yourself options. You can do more than one thing. If you don't see another option, create one. Doing nothing is a choice. So this card asks you to stop procrastinating and make a decision already. It may suggest that you go down a different path or take a different route or take a different approach or consider an alternative perspective. Okay, so in a work or business reading, other than all the things I just mentioned, it could suggest that there's a way out of whatever mess you may be in, or it can refer to multiple businesses or splitting a business into more than one. Or if you're considering a particular career, it'll tell you to consider an alternative, right? All right, in a spiritual reading, It may be telling you that now is the time to make some important decisions as to which way you want to go in life, or to choose one spiritual path over another. It may be telling you to take the road less traveled rather than following the crowd. In a relationship reading, because it's a card of alternatives and escape routes, it's generally not a card you want to see in a relationship spread. Of course, that depends on your question. It can indicate having doubts, deciding to go separate ways, having an exit strategy, or maybe it's telling you you need to have one. It could say that someone's at a crossroads or a turning point in the relationship. They're thinking of moving on. There's a parting of the ways, or it could even indicate being double-crossed. Now, in a health reading, as the card of alternatives and choices, it can refer to having alternatives regarding your treatment. It is one of the tree cards, so it can indicate having options that as to for healing, right? It's a positive card in that regard, as one of the tree cards. So it can wait a minute, let me say it again. It can reference alternative health care or getting a second opinion. Hang on, let me take a drink of water. There we go. Got to loosen my tongue up. All right, anatomically, it stands for the lymphatic system, which includes the lymph vessels, nodes, and the spleen. It also represents the capillaries, veins, arteries, basically all of the transport pathways in the body. Now, looking at the cards on the table, we have a lot of paths here. And, generally I look for decks that have cards that show more than one, because some decks, like this one, I think this is the only one here that just shows a single path, right? And that's why I also didn't choose to call this card the path, because there's more than one path. It's paths, or it's ways, or crossroads, right? Anyway, yeah, because of the way I use the card, and it does have a directional cue, I do like to see a card that has more than one path, right? All right, so the fairy tale fortune card says, the path, decisions, find a way ahead. And we have the red owl verse card here, the red owl. It says, seek a faraway road by storm clouds unshaded, and so escape danger by the route indicated. And that's referencing the method of distance there, which we'll get into in a moment. All right, so we can compare it to a few cards. There are two cards here that are new, taken from two new decks. And here's one of them, and I am going to do a walkthrough. I'm going to do a walkthrough video on this cute little deck here. This is Zen, Simply Lenormand, recently released. Very cute. Okay, so let's do some comparisons. We can compare the crossroads or ways to the tower, because the tower is restricted, whereas the ways represents free will. You have the choice. You have alternatives. You can go either way. It's up to you. Free will. Okay, regarding its reference to more than one, we can compare it to the birds and the whip. Let's do these together. Right? Because the birds is the card of a pair or a couple, and the whip references doing something over and over, more than once, right? Whereas the ways relates to having more than one option. Okay? We can compare it to the cross. This is a good one. Okay? Because the cross references being stuck at a crossroad with no way out, or you don't see a way out. You don't think you have a way out. You're stuck carrying that cross, right? Whereas the ways says you have options. Right? It's the free will card. Okay. This is a card with a directional cue, and it is that the card on either side indicates your options. Okay? Now you can charge this card and lay a small spread, taking the cards on either side of it, or just lay it down and lay cards on either side of it to represent two different options. And I'll show you an example of that right now, because this was a really clear one. I love when this happens. I asked, should I leave on my trip, right? I asked, should I leave on Friday or Saturday? And, you know, I could have left Friday after work, or I could have left Saturday. And I laid this spread by charging the Crossroads card, and then I shuffled the deck, and then I took the 2 cards in front of it and 2 cards behind it. And I set my intention that the cards to the left would indicate leaving on Friday, and the cards to the right would indicate leaving on Saturday. And it was crystal clear because look what I got. I got the travel card with the clouds. It's the classic combination of stormy weather or you know, a trouble on your journey, right? Even if I hadn't gotten the travel card, it's also the card that represents the car, right? But even if that hadn't come up, just having the clouds on that side would have told me not to leave on Friday. But the really cool thing is that here, you know, for leaving on Saturday, we have 2 positive cards. There are 2 celestial cards. But it also told me to leave while the moon is still in the sky, and then I'd be successful. And that's so funny because we did. We left, I think, like 4 a.m. It was still dark out. And, you know, I just slept. I just took I don't even think I got dressed. I just took my pillow and my blanket and got in the car. My husband drove. But he said the whole way up, he felt like he was just missing traffic. And then, you know, he could see that the road crews were just arriving like behind him to start construction and putting the cones out and all that, right? So he felt like the whole way up, he was just missing trouble. So that was right on the money. Love that. Okay. Let's look at the plot. You know what? First, let me put the GT in front of you because that's what we're going to get to explain the method of distance and the plot and all of that fun stuff. And I'm using my Chakra Lenormand Mini here. Let's see. Oh, look at that. Nice and even, I think. So many times I think my head is crooked. You know, I look at my pictures and they're all lopsided. Like, wow, my head is crooked. All right. Okay, so let's look at the plot, right? And I'm just going to read it right here from the instruction sheet. The roads surrounded by clouds are signs of disaster, but without this card, and if distant from the person, indicates that we shall find ways and means to avoid the threatening danger. Okay, the wording of this, the way that it is written is very important here. Okay, my translation is, the ways, if touched by the clouds, is a sign of a troubled path or being confused about which way to go. But if the clouds aren't touching the ways and are far from the seeker, you will find a way to avoid the danger, right? So do you want it near or not? I want it near, especially if there are unfavorable cards and constellations bringing problems to the seeker, because it says that there's a way out of the problem. If the seeker has only favorable cards nearby and no troubling constellations near any life area cards, it's okay to find the ways at a distance because it's not relevant at the time of the spread, right? Okay, so there are 2 different common interpretations of the plot. Some see it as saying that you want the clouds far from the ways and the ways far from the seeker. Andy B sees it that way. If you have his book, go ahead and check it out. While others, such as Bjorn and myself, see it as saying that you want the clouds far from the seeker and far from the ways, right? Because of the wording of it and the way it's written. The clouds, comma, surrounded by clouds. The roads, comma, surrounded by clouds, comma, are signs of disaster, semicolon. So that separates the 2. But without this card, the clouds, and if distant from person, clouds, indicates that we shall find ways and means to avoid the threatening danger. Okay, so that's how we're interpreting that. You can go either way. Pick whichever one makes sense to you and stick with it. You have to pick one, otherwise you'll never know what this card is saying. Okay. The original Game of Hope instructions said, unnoticed, this path leads around the mountains right back to the garden. The word unnoticed infers that not making a decision, hesitating, or procrastinating sends you back in the game. And at the same time, it infers that you have another choice. I see it as go back to the park and sit on a bench and think it over and then try again, right? Because if you look at the game of hope, it was set up putting the cards in order and using that as the game board. And the garden is our social card. It's followed by the mountain, which represents enemies that attempt to block us. And then the ways follows that, showing that there's always a way out, okay? All right, the coffee card verse. Favorably placed, it shows that a fortunate chance is near at hand, gain of money or long life. Unfavorably placed, it indicates a difficult path or future ahead. So from this you can see that the coffee cards related the ways to one's path through life. All right, so let's get to the method of distance. As I already mentioned with the plot, this is a card of choices and options, and it's a card that's favorable when near, right? Because you want to have choices, you want to have options. To me, that's just common sense. Remember that it is a neutral card, however, and is influenced by the surrounding cards. So the closer it falls to your card, the more within reach your options are, and the clearer your view is regarding them, and the more control you have over them as to, which way you're going to go or which choice you're going to make, right? That's what being in the comfort zone means. Remember that cards falling near your card are being highlighted and brought to your attention, right? They have the greatest impact on you at the time of the spread, but equally you have the clearest view of these situations and generally the most control over them. When you consider the ways from this point of view, you can see that nearby gives the seeker a clear view of their options and the most control over which way they're going to go. So near also says that it's time to take action, right? That's why it's falling near. It's saying time to make a decision, make a choice. Okay, what other cards are there? Are there any life area cards? This is where decisions need to be made or where there are alternatives that you may not have considered. Is the key also there? Because that says you already know or have access to a solution. We're going to see that in a second in this spread. Now, when the clouds are touching the ways, especially above or the dark side facing, it can indicate hesitation, indecision, or that a bad choice was made and now you have to figure out what to do, or just that it's going to be difficult for you to see a clear path forward, right? Just as the clouds near the ship, like I just showed you, indicates bad weather at sea or bad weather on your vacation or on your journey, near the ways indicates a stormy path. Right? That's why you don't want the clouds near it. Now you can say that when far, this card still references choices or escape routes, but they're currently out of your reach. They're not easy to see, right? During the time period of the spread. I like to think of it as when near, you definitely have a way out and your options are clear and within reach, but far, you still may have those options, but they're not as clear at this time, or you may have to take an alternate approach to find your way out of something, okay? It's not part of any clusters, and it's not a life area card for anything. Okay, so let's just look at this spread. This was a spread for a woman, right? So here she is, here's the seeker, and she was caught in the middle of a family battle, right? I love how this column shows the family is like the family is stabbing her in the head with the cross. So, but here you can see she's standing on the ways. So that says that she has a way out. There's options available to her, and the fact that she has the key touching her too says that she already has the solution. It's available to her. She has access to it, right? So what you do when this card is near, right, is you see what card falls on either side of it. That's your directional cue, right? That's showing the two options of either way that she can go. All right, so you want to check these two cards and see what cards touch them. In this case, I looked at the entire columns because they were like a big exclamation mark, because it was so obvious that this card was better than this card. But the entire column. This is all nice cards. This is all crappy cards, right? So it was pretty clear that it told her, you know, that being the peacekeeper and being the mediator rather than joining in the fight was the way to go, you know. Even her knighted cards, you know, she knights to the coffin and the birds, right? That says end the gossip between the feuders. And even her fate line says that the complications in the house will be brought to safer ground through communication. And that's the change that will bring support. That, you know, that's where she needs to support them by bringing a change and taking charge, right? Even the lily above the cross says to stay neutral, right? Regarding this suffering that she's enduring, right? This is the card of peace and harmony within the family, within a relationship, and right? It's a card that says stay neutral and stay peaceful, and it's like the Temperance card. Okay, so now let's look at, you can see that the clouds is far for her. It's actually just out of her reach, right? So what if she had the clouds above her? Okay, the clouds are now touching her, but they're not touching the ways. What would this say? This would say that she has options. She has a way out of these troubles. Okay, but if we turned it like this is what you don't want to see. Okay, in this case, she still has the ways near, but now the clouds is not only touching her, but it's right above the ways. And this is saying that she does have a way out, but she's not easily going to see it. This is a troubled path. All right. Or maybe it's not just saying that she may not see it clearly, but it just may be a hard solution. It may be a hard decision to make, you know, that kind of thing. It's just going to depend on the entire spread. But okay, so that's the deal with the clouds. And of course, if we found this far from her, you know, it's saying that options and alternatives and or out of her reach, right, during this time, and that she may not be prepared to make a choice at this time, right, because that's out of her reach. All right, so I think that is it, my friends, for the ways. And next we have the mice card coming up. Okay, so I will see you in the next video. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to like and share and hit that thanks button if you are so inclined, and go play with your cards. Bye, everybody.